Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
I'm at ease.
Would you say you're in a meditative state? Are you just calm, serene?
Getting close.
Have you lowered the amount of oxygen intake that you have? We need it for at least a couple of hours of survival.
No, I know that we've soundproofed the podcast room.
Yes, we have.
But we haven't made it airtight.
Well, I've got a surprising piece of news for you, Rachel. To keep our episodes under a certain length, I've now removed the amount of oxygen from the room, so we need to keep precise, and we need to get into the heart of the matter, which is we are a married couple who reviews episodes of science fiction television one at a time. We are called Yum Yum because Rachel really loved a line of dialogue from Star Trek. Sorry, Rachel, don't waste it.
I will.
Here she goes, guys.
Spend my air wisely saying, no, Ryan picked the name of the podcast because he became obsessed with that moment in Star Trek Discovery where an individual says yum yum when asked, hey, you want to go kill a guy?
And she licked her lips when she said it, threw her hair back, and it was such a wild moment that we embrace it. People have actually said, you don't need to explain it anymore. You don't need to go over Yum Yum because we know what it is. But guess what? There are those folks out there who do not know. There are those guests out there who do not know. And so we explain it because, in a way, we still don't know ourselves. Why did that happen? Why was that allowed? Why is Oscar-winning actress Michelle Yeoh in that scene? Fun fact, she won an Oscar as soon as she stopped doing Star Trek Discovery. Literally, as soon as she stopped doing it, she went on to a project that won her an Academy Award. And so, am I saying Star Trek Discovery held her back? Yes, I am. And we are reviewing episodes of Babylon 5, a series near and dear to our hearts. It's a show that we have seen before, so we are rewatching it, revisiting it, and reviewing it, which means there are spoilers, but we're in the final days of the series, so you have no one else to blame but yourself to watch the remaining handful of episodes to understand all of our quick-witted jabs about the one we are talking over today. But we're not alone, are we, Rachel?
No.
I can read the episode title, and it says it's featuring a person called, Willie, Billy, Tilly. I don't know. I can't read. I'm actually dyslexic. I'm not actually.
Billy Bob Brooks.
Billy Bob Brooks is in the house. We're joined by a good friend. Will, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm good.
You are good? But are you ever bad?
I mean, everyone's bad sometimes.
Yeah, have you ever gone through Ranger training and got a scar on your face because you're just being too emo for yourself?
No, I've not been too hardcore or too stone cold in training, I don't think.
In what moment in your life would you say was your darkest? When was Will in edgelord mode?
Oh, when was Will in edgelord mode? I'm not the edgiest person in the world. I don't know. Doesn't everyone go for a bit edgy in high school? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably everyone's a bit edgy in high school. You try at some point.
Your version of an edgelord is, one time I didn't say bye-bye to my papa, and that was real bad of me, and I'll never forget.
Pretty edgy. It was pretty edgy.
When I walked out, I did not say love you to my mother, and that was a real shame on my part. How could I? Then you put your big headphones on, and you listen to nothing but, your emo bands of the day. Rachel, you were far more into that scene of music than I. What would Will listen to if he, after not saying I love you to his mother, what band would he play? What one?
I think he would be pretty still, softcore. So maybe just the My Chemical Romance. Because lots of angst, but not too metal.
What about Panic at the Disco?
I feel like that's too ethereal for hardcore.
But Will is an ethereal man.
Yes.
Hence, we have brought you back on for the podcast, Will. It's a great
But
pleasure
not
to have you back here.
Edgelord mode.
But Will's
Not
version
not early Panic at the Disco stuff.
I was going to say, is Panic at the Disco not considered to be for preteen edgy kids? Who are they for?
It's too twee to be edgy.
Okay, sure. I'll take your word. I'm not a Panic fan. Everyone, direct your emails over to yumyumpod@gmail.com to let us know where you think
have a
Panic at the
song
Disco
that's
falls
like
on the spectrum.
9 in the afternoon. It's like...
But let's talk to our good friend over here. Will, we had you on for a Season 4 discussion last, and now you're here to talk with us about a Season 5 episode of B5. But give everyone a little bit of a refresher about your relationship and your connection to Babylon 5. Did you grow up with this? Is this something you watched recently? And give us the rundown again.
Oh, well, it's not too complicated. This is, it's a show I'd heard of for quite a bit. And my dad had watched some of it when it was on originally. So it may have even been on in the house at certain points. But he was just too busy at the time it was originally airing. So my dad just didn't commit to it. And then when you gave us the lot, Ryan. We watched it together with my dad, and we had a really good time.
You bonded over it. You both held hands and said, I hope Lanier is not going to be an incel in the final season." When you started the show and found out, hey, that's the boy from Lost in Space. Surely he won't be an incel in the final season. He's just a nice guy. Not that type of nice guy, of course. Oh, he's got a scar now and he wears all black? I'm sure he's fine.
He's in a uniform.
He's meditating, and talking about meditating, we are actually going over episode 14 of season 5, Meditations on the Abyss. And the DVD description is beautifully...
How does JMS sum this one up?
It is beautifully summed up as such. Delenn violates the chain of command by sending Lanier on a covert mission to find out who's behind the attacks on Alliance shipping. Jakar copes with his emergence as a cult hero.
All our holy books are reproduced exactly as written. Line for line, word for word, right down to the flaws in the paper. The circular stain is a coffee stain left by Mr. Garibaldi. When I confronted him with it, he said it's the best part of the book.
When it comes to Yum Yum, it was a moment in Star Trek Discovery, as said, that was absurd, it was humorous, it was funny, but it was also sexual. Did you know that, Will? That it's sexual?
So Yum Yum was about murder, and it was also hot and heavy, was it?
I mean, the phrase yum yum, when said breathily and licking your lips, doesn't it just have a vibe to it? If I just said to you...
Suppose so.
If you just said to me casually a random thing like, "Oh, how you doing, Ryan?" and I just went, "Yum yum," you would be like, "Oh, okay, that's a little bit not on for a Sunday morning," you know, that type of thing. Like, you would be like, "Hey, Ryan, keep it in your pants." And so we like to look at the characters in B5 and wonder who could have said yum yum, because it's not just sexual, it's not just funny, it's not just random, but there's an overall energy to it that we call yum yum energy. And Will, you're our guest, so we'll hear from you first. In Meditations on the Abyss, who is the character who could have said yum yum if Joe Michael Straczynski was not a coward and didn't put it in?
I'm of two minds of who could have said it. Maybe Jakar, when he's in his little Bible study group and he's just so exasperated by them not getting it. Instead of going with the river one, he could have gone yum yum.
And they would have clapped even louder.
That would have got an even greater reaction. And then maybe, I forget his name, but the captain of the Mbryo.
Montoya.
I remember his ship's name, his
Yes.
sister's name.
Yes, Enrico Montoya.
He was a hard ass for a lot of this episode, but he had his little playful moments. He might have said yum yum.
Oh.
I'm not sure in what context. I'm not sure in what context you'd ever say it. But He might have said it at
He
some
did say
point.
Easter egg hunt and didn't give the Minbari context for what any of that means. He just assumes, hey, I know your religious stuff, you should know mine. Rachel.
Yes, because Easter egg hunts are religious.
But Easter, you know what I mean?
Easter itself, but egg hunts.
Well, I did Easter egg hunts for Easter. I've never done them outside of Easter. Sorry, it's not my fault. I didn't create the tradition. I just enacted upon myself.
You're wasting air, honey.
You literally stopped me from asking you who would be Yum Yum Sayer in this episode. And so
I say Franklin.
Franklin. Wow. Why?
I see him saying it when he shrugs at Jakar, like, what are you gonna do? I see him being like, yum yum.
Will made a great point for the captain. He was in my list, but then I went through the episode.
The captain's
I looked at the characters who featured very, very, very much, and I realized there's one person for me, and his name is Michael Alfredo Garibaldi in the final scene of the episode, in which he is drunk, but he is delivering yum yum energy. But I think we've all picked great options. Franklin, especially when he's standing in on the sermon that Jakar is giving at the end when they all leave, and he gives this smile and he throws his hands up in the air like, oh boy, that was crazy. He could have jabbed in a little yum yum Jakar, and then the captain, he could have said it. And I want to give a special shout out to the Minbari Ranger in training, Findel. He also had sweaty YYE, where he could have said it in a stressful moment rather than in a fun, playful moment. Meditations on the Abyss, Rachel. What are your thoughts on this episode? What's been your history with it? Has this one fared in the mind as well as others?
I like the content, not the context. I enjoy what happens in this episode, aside from the context of Linear being an incel. I don't like it. I don't want it. I want it erased. I want that removed.
You want it out of your narrative, even though it is the narrative.
Yes, but if it was just that part was just cut out, the scenes were played a little bit different, because it's a lot of subtext. It's not like Linear's like, I love you and you'll never love me. It doesn't go fully there, but it's as close as Babylon 5 gets to that.
I always give this episode a lot more shit than it actually deserves. In my recollection, I think of this as a very boring episode, as one that does not stack up particularly well in comparison to others.
Another gimmick episode of sorts, because it's Linear and Jakar.
I guess I don't look at it as a gimmick episode. I more look at it as similar to some of the others of Season 5, in which it's a slow burn approach to a character study, and it is weaving ever so lightly into the overarching narrative, which in this case is the Alliance shipping line attacks. But
another episode without Lockley.
I really enjoy this episode when I actually do sit down and watch it. It has a very playful attitude. It has a lot of heavy material, especially with Linear, but even in that, the captain and the other ranger and all of the people in Jakar's story, all of Londo's stuff, there's a real permission to just have fun. Londo's cracking wise about the Drazi. Veer is going off the chain with a sword. It's just a really delightful episode. And I think this one is an improvement of similar stories we've seen in this season, like with the two Minbari rangers that visited Babylon 5 earlier in the season. I feel like this is a better version of that episode, in which one of the rangers this time is actually a character we know. It's Linear. And I think this does a greater job of establishing why we would even want a story following the Rangers rather than our crew on Babylon 5. the actual command staff of B5 are not in this episode all that much. They have a dinner scene. They're sprinkled in here and there, but I didn't miss them like I do in other season 5 episodes in which Sheridan or Delenn or Franklin or Garibaldi aren't as prevalent. For you, Will, I wanted you to come on for a season 5 episode, and I thought this could be a good one because it follows through on some of the Jakar stuff we talked about with you last time. Last time, he was offered to be the leader of his people, and then he rejected it, and now here he is again having to be a spiritual leader. But also, I was keen to know your opinions on the linear storyline as it went along, because we haven't, in our private time, talked about it all that much. But what are your thoughts and feelings and your overall connection to Meditations on the Abyss?
Well, this episode, it's like, actually, looking back on it, when I rewatched it on Thursday night, I rewatched it twice for the podcast, I was actually surprised, because I remembered this storyline where Lanier is, his life's falling apart, and he goes to the training with Findel, and they, are left out there to test them. And I remembered the Jakar stuff where he's, frustrated with his spiritual role, and I remember the eye thing with Jakar where he gets his new eye back, but I'd actually forgotten that these were the same episode, because I'm actually really quite fond of after all the crazy brutal stuff Jakar has been through, he still lets himself have his little drama queen moments where it's like, my eyes don't match, and he's just so genuinely openly pleased that they like finally match again. I really enjoyed that one. The Lanier plot, I get what Rachel's saying, where it's like, this is like, it's kind of an unpleasant plot line, because it's like, you like Lanier, you don't want to see his life go in this direction. It's just it's a derailing train quality to it.
Yeah.
And he's the type of person that is deeply, deeply uncomfortable in the real world. And so when you have it in your narrative, it's not as if he's the romantic, tragic hero of Marcus. Instead, he's a creep, is how it is emphasized in the show. Like, the show doesn't condone him.
No.
Everyone in the narrative that knows about what Lanier is says it's bad. Yeah. And yet we are still having to watch for 3 seasons Lanier still keep doing it. And it's just...
Even Morden, who was dead at the time, could see that it was a horrible idea, and yet it just goes on.
Will brought up a really brilliant point about Jakar that I like as well, which is we have him go through this religious awakening. He's been through a trial of fire. He's gone through so much, and yet the narrative can still afford him those moments of flamboyancy, those moments of just being a prissy little bitch, being a little drama queen, being a trickster. We've had him be the bodyguard to Londo because he thought it would be really funny. That was the reason he wanted to be a bodyguard for Londo, was it would be really funny if I did that. And the eye comment, in which he is really unsettled by the fact he doesn't have matching eyes. It's not my color. And one of the beats of this is he gets a new eye. He gets his matching red eye again, and I love it.
The prop work in that scene is awesome.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so good. They have, obviously, they've made a bust of Jakar's head, like it's probably one of the masks that they have, and they have one eye closed, and they have like a fake eye in there, and Franklin just ripping the eye out. But it looks great. It looks good.
Great, and there's just a bit of voiceover of like, oh,
yeah, and they have certain shots where they cut to and it's actually the actor there, and certain ones where it's not, and it's pretty seamless at times of which one is real and which one isn't. They do a good job of balancing that. But for yourself, Rachel, this Jakar side of it is just a real slice of life story. It has a great...
Yeah, it's just like, where's Jakar at? And we get the sense that he is very much still grappling with his status, and annoyed at the nuns being where they are at in their journey, because he's trying to help them stand up, get on their own 2 feet and see things more clearly. But they are not at that stage where they're ready to let go of the old view.
I talk, they ask questions. I don't think anything gets resolved.
Well, I'd like to come and sit in on it, if you don't mind.
As you wish. You have given me back my sight. The least I can do in return is share a little of my confusion.
Franklin wants to be his friend, wants to sit in and hear all of this good word. He's read his book. He's the only human character outside of Garibaldi we know to have read Jakar's book. We don't know if Sheridan sat down and read it. We only know Franklin has, and it makes a lot of sense because Franklin is
A religious man.
Underneath all of his science, he's a deeply spiritual and religious man. And I really liked their bond, their connection in this episode. It's only in a handful of scenes, but they've both been here since the beginning of the show, and we get certain amount of scenes between the two of them, but they do have a great rapport on the screen together. And as you said, Rachel, it's a strong dynamic. What are the things that you feel help connect these two characters together when in reality, we're now over 100 episodes of the show, they don't get too many scenes together to connect, but when they do, what is it that brings them together in which we, the audience, can just see these scenes and buy that they're happening?
Yeah, well, we understand the characters as individuals, and the scenes themselves that we do get have such a clear purpose within the stories that we're being told. And the performers are amazing. So it's just another one of those cases with Babylon 5 of the sum is greater than the parts.
Well, they don't necessarily have the longest scene together in this episode. It is just kind of those sort of 2 bits. But they really sell it, especially Franklin. Just thinking back on the show, Franklin was not necessarily a man who asked a lot of other people necessarily, but he's really keen to attend this little religious discussion. He's super keen. He really sells it, and Franklin and Jakar do have that in common, in they are quite interested in religion, quite devoutly religion. They both probably wouldn't expect it. I think I remember definitely for Jakar coming into the show, I was actually quite surprised when Jakar was devoutly religious. I don't remember if I was surprised when Franklin was devoutly religious, but I probably was.
Because in the first season, he's all science, and he's very dismissive of a lot of things, but he has a cool future religion, or like a sci-fi religion of once we met aliens, it opens up the amount of perspective we have on the world around us. And so would that not change the relationship of faith? And I really appreciate that, because Jakar himself, although devout in his specific beliefs, over the course of the adventures he's had to really open himself up to concepts that go beyond the book of Jaquan. Hence, he's writing his own book, and he's been influenced by the Vorlons, but he's also been influenced by the Centauri, and he's been influenced by Babylon 5, and it's all bleeding through into his work. And Franklin, his religion is basically to co-opt and to examine and to study all of these different faiths, including emerging ones like Jakar's. So I think it adds up. But one of the things I've not really thought too hard about, but it really hit me in the face with this, is Jakar and Franklin have had a bond with one another because they've never asked for anything from one another, but they've provided things to one another. So I think back to Franklin delivering to Jakar the message from the Centauri Emperor about how they're they're wanting peace, or when the Centauri were making their move to go attack the Narn homeworld, Franklin was the one that told Jakar that when nobody else had figured it out, and he had nothing to gain from that. But like Franklin has no allegiances to any specific group because he has an allegiance to all groups in terms of life itself, and he has a moral compass that's very strict. Rachel, Jakar has had many facets, but is spiritual leader Jakar one of your favorite versions?
Yeah, because it's the culmination of all of the previous iterations of Jakar. Without all of those eras, he wouldn't be where he is now.
And what did you think of his speechifying in this episode?
I thought that it was really good because it's written in a way where you can understand Jakar, but you can understand why the Narns don't understand Jakar.
We've gone through the journey with him.
Mm.
So when he's giving these soliloquies, these giant paragraphs of text of him still figuring it out, because the way that it's delivered and the way it's written is, you can tell that this isn't a pre-prepared speech, that it's not something, it's off the cuff. He's kind of rambling in a lot of ways, but
he got asked a question and he's figuring out the answer as he's answering it.
I mean, it's a good scene. It's probably, I think it might be the best scene in the episode. And it does tie in to, because the last episode what we did was the Long Night, the end of the Mad Emperor arc, and it's like that has a very similar moment. This one was more sort of casual, with Franklin shrugging his shoulders. It's like, well, that's just the way it is. It wasn't quite like the end of the Long Night where they offer Jakar leadership of the planet. And it's a bit like, we beat the Centauri because we were just too tough, and he just like, what have you done? What have you done?
What have you suffered? What have you endured? And he's missing a fucking eye as they say that to him. Yeah,
and it's just like, oh, you just don't get it, guys. And it even ties into what he was saying at the start of that scene, where it's like, we're not gonna, we can't be free unless we can laugh at ourselves.
Last time he was laughing in despair of like, wow, they just don't fucking get it. Oh, how wild. But this episode, there's still that despair of they don't get it, but he's far more in tune with it now. He's like, okay, they don't get it now, but perhaps we can get there slowly but surely. Well, in the Long Night, he's like, man, I can't deal with this. I'm out of here. This is the funniest shit right now.
Yeah, he's embraced. He's like, okay, they don't get it. I get it. But I've got to, you can't just throw your hands up and just oh, it's just too sad. I've just got to walk away. It's like, no, you got to try and help people out.
Yeah, he won't abandon them.
Truth is a river. There you go. What's God? The mouth of the river. There you go. Hey, he is that teacher, right, Rachel, that you see in some schooling environments in which the kids just don't get the thing, and so it's like, well, okay, here's the fucking most blunt way of giving it to you. Will that do you? Will that give you the things you need? Because I need to move on. Okay, I need to move on.
Yep, you won't figure out the answer, so here it is.
But they're trying. That's the important thing. They're trying.
But they aren't ready. The Narns still are needing it their way. When he answers that question to begin with, he says, you don't actually want to know the answer to it. Yes, we do. No, you don't. And they don't. They don't want to know it. They just want to be reassured that their values are correct. They want to be reassured that the light that shines on them is God, and that God has looked upon them. And that whole speech about the light is really applicable to the Narns, but they aren't all the way there. And it's kind of tragic, don't you think, Rachel, that the Narns are a race that we find to be very sympathetic because the war has happened, their history, we've been told it, and because Jakar and Talon are both deeply likable characters, and yet they are the ones that still have not progressed too much since we started the show, like the culture itself.
Yeah, but they haven't devolved like the Centauri, so it's all a matter of perspective.
I guess that's a fair way of looking at it. Talking about the Centauri, we have some shenanigans happening. Veer is promoted. Veer is going to get the job of ambassador to Babylon 5 once Londo leaves, but he's not quite ready yet, Will. He's not quite ready yet, and this is definitely highlighted by him getting fast food.
Yeah.
And Mbryo's, you know?
And apparently, like, he throws it up.
They're not biologically equipped to handle fast food, is what Londo says. But he's like, it tastes so good, though.
Going down, not so good going up.
Were they doing... Because the Centauri have a big Roman thing going on, and I know this is actually... urban legend's the wrong word, but this is not true. That idea in pop culture that, you know, the Roman aristocracy eat all the food and then you vomit it back up and then you eat even more food, you know? Do you think maybe the Centauri that? It seems like it might be their kind of thing.
And it's their thing, too, of they had that line in the first episode where Garibaldi is like, hey, you Centauri look like us, but once we got our hands on your DNA and your biology, you're very, very different. Like, and throughout the course of the show, they've really emphasized that. It's like they have two hearts, they have tentacle penises, they have this, and they biologically can't do this, or this. And now it's like, oh, they can't handle fast food. Every other race, including the Minbari, can have fast food, but not the Centauri. Come on, Mikbaris with the golden head bones.
I like the idea that, like, the Minbari is like, oh, we got to embrace the human side of us. We share souls, so we've got to open our own macas to, like, really get into the human thing.
I see it more, like, as potentially...
cultural appropriation?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's like a Minbari corporation or they're just using the iconography of it.
In my eyes, it's those Drazis capitalizing.
I just thought it'd be really... I just assumed it was the Minbari because I guess in my head, I just thought a bunch of Minbari working at a space macas was like, a funny image.
Yeah, it is. It is. But, like... who would have started that? Is it the religious caste that's started, like...
I know who. It's the workers. It's got to be the working caste. It's profit.
Mm-hmm.
It's people make the burgers, people feed the people, you know, and they're the ones in charge of the Grey Council nowadays. So it's got to be... That's the thing, too. This is one of the first things we know of Minbari culture that's changed since the workers took charge.
Yep.
Is there's fast food with Minbari iconography.
Took my point from me.
Oh, no! As long as you don't reference the fact that communism exists, Rachel, then we'll be fine. Workers of the world unite.
I eat at McBarry's.
McBarry's? Oh, is that the new place in the brown sector? With the golden...
The golden head bones, yes.
We are not biologically equipped to handle fast food.
I know, but it tastes so great going down. Coming up again, it's not so terrific, but...
Well, you'll have to change that.
Will, what do you think about Veer as a character overall? And how do you feel about this being a way of the series positioning him towards an end point? Because that's also a part of this promotion, is saying, here's where the characters are going to be when we finish up the show.
It was I really quite enjoy Veer. Probably, if I had to say, it's like, I think you even asked me, was there too much you didn't enjoy about Babylon 5? And I think one of the only things I said is like, oh, you didn't get very much Veer at the end of it. You got enough, but I could do with more. And I think you said, Veer's actor was unwell during some of the last seasons or something.
Oh, he had diabetes problems, season 4 and season 5. That's why he lost like a dramatic amount of weight and stuff, as well as he was involved in some other projects. He was doing some directing jobs. He was directing episodes of B5, so that may be reasons why he's behind. Like, he's behind the camera instead of in front of more often than not. He did the Bester episode, the one where it's a day in the life of Bester. As well as the season 4 finale. So he also kind of moved into the different different part of the production of television, so that adds up. But when Via first entered, what did you think of him as a character in comparison to now, where you wrap him up?
Well, I enjoyed that, like, Via comes in as, like, sort of the bit of a wacky sidekick to Londo, who's already a bit wacky himself. And then we go through of, like, Via grappling with severe moral issues, trying to keep his hands clean in a very, very unpleasant situation, and now sort of coming into power and trying and build a more moral world, you know. He's, like, got to try and use it for good and things. And he's also, like, I mean, you sort of saw the contrast with the scene with the Drazi fruit seller, where he basically says, it's like, you're still the Via from season 1, fuck off. And then Via comes back as, like, evidently not, with his sword. Because it's like, season 1 Via absolutely never would have done that.
Oh, season 1 Via was he had a spine, but he was spineless still at the same time. Like, remember when he stood up to Londo for the first time, Rachel, when it was the famous "my shoes are too tight, but it doesn't matter because I've forgotten how to dance." And the way Stephen first played that was him saying it in a very meek manner, in which he's like, Londo, excuse me, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
Now he just straight up says, Londo, you're wrong on this, and he has his own opinions, he has his own autonomy, but he's
not meek.
He's still an innocent lamb in a way where he still needs to be guided. That's why I really like Londo's arrogant in this episode, but he's also like a dad. He's like a proud father, in which he sees that Via is at the cusp of being able to accept this responsibility, but I still need to be his mentor. And I think Stephen first plays that really well as too with Via in this episode, in which he's like, well, I'll go talk to the Drazi. It should be fine.
Yeah.
I'm a nice guy. Surely we can just talk this out. Hey, excuse me, you shouldn't have done that. That's very bad. And then he gets told off by this fucking random not even like a political adversary, just a random fruit seller guy who shot his shot. And he's like, I will swat you. You go away now. You're a pathetic little man. He's like, okay, well, now it's time to play Londo's way, which is just to fuck shit up. And for yourself, Rachel, how does that feel? How does that taste, with Via at the end of this episode having to be like a guy who grabs a sword and wrecks up a local business and like rubs grapes in a guy's face? Like he's a jerk. Like he's less than his be a jerk. How do you feel about that?
It makes a lot of sense for the Centauri. And it makes sense for Via. He is at the point where he cracks it. And it feels therapeutic, because it's not just like he's doing it because he can. It's like he's proving something to himself, as well as sticking it to the Drazi who's insulted him.
Zach, when he talks about it at the dinner table, I love Jeff Conaway's acting during that scene. He really did feel like a guy who's just witnessed this crazy event and he's telling his friends about it while they're having a couple of drinks. I really loved the line deliveries, but in that scene from everyone, but you know you fucked up when you made Via mad, and just John Sheridan be like, I don't think I've ever seen Via mad. It's like, no, you haven't. You really haven't. He's been nothing but a sweetheart.
And you know, look, Via's a moral man. He's gonna try and build a better world, but it's like, you know, the past casts long shadows, you know. It's like, it's a lot. It's hard, isn't it?
Everyone has their breaking points. And
It's
Via
a hard
met his
thing.
breaking point with the Drazi, who, by the way, the Drazi, what do you think about those guys, Will?
They're so stupid.
I like that they're pricks.
Yeah.
Even in the scenarios where there was because it's like, look, man, their shipping lines are getting attacked. Innocent people are dying. They're not completely in the wrong or anything, but it's like, I still like that they're dicks. Just in kind of a bit of everything. They're just kind of dicks.
Rachel, you wanted erased. Lanier's love is in this episode.
God.
Lanier is in this episode. We haven't seen him in a little while. Since Day of the Dead, I do believe.
He's back. Dylan's sneaking out. lying to her husband.
But she's
about
saving
meeting
face.
a stranger in the dark.
She breaks Guy's finger.
Yeah, that's fun. I still find it weird that they're like sitting in an exhaust tube thing.
Who, Linear and
A
Delenn?
shaft.
Well, that's their secret little conversation place. They can't meet in the bar. They just had a fight there. But, okay, you don't like the Linear being creep. That's very obvious if
Yes.
you've listened to previous episodes.
I get it, but I don't like it.
How do you feel about how it was handled here? Because it's primarily in the conversation between Linear and Delenn. It's
mostly
got
fine. I think it's subtle enough in this where it's just the right amount of uncomfortable. You're like, can you just stop, Linear? Can you just stop? And he refuses to.
It's played so well. Bill Mumy and Mira Fallon act this so well. They've every time they've had to touch the issue in the show, these two performers rise to the occasion. They play it so subtly, and yet because it's so understated every time, it makes it all the more just, I want to rip my hair out.
Yeah, she doesn't want their relationship to change, which has been her perspective for a long time. She's like, I saw it coming, but I just didn't want to acknowledge it. I thought if I didn't say anything, it would go away. And she's still acting like that.
She has to lie to John to do this because she wants to do this. And is she just using Linear because he is someone that she has always been using? And he mentions that, hey, if I didn't train so hard, if I didn't do all of this stuff, would you have called upon me for the job? And she gives an answer by giving no answer at all. She just has this expression on her face, and it says everything you need to know, which is yes, you doing all of this. You basically sacrificing yourself for me yet again benefits me yet again.
And I will use this to my advantage because Delenn consistently does that. She uses the tools at her disposal, even when those tools are people.
It's not to say that Delenn does not have sincere feelings and she does not care, but she, in her position within her culture and now within this alliance, a part of her daily life is to use people. That's just the truth. She's had to use Jakar. She's had to use Sheridan. That's just the truth of it. And that's what Delenn has always had for Linear. They may be friends. They may be comrades in arms. They may have been there for one another in their darkest of times, but it's always been a distinct relationship.
Yeah.
She is the boss and he is the employee. Like,
always
she's in charge and he's
subservient. Always.
And when he runs away, when he says, I can no longer abide by this, it is tearing me up inside, I am leaving, he and her cannot help but somehow bring that dynamic back to one another.
I hear you have been training harder than you should. You should go more slowly.
And if I had not worked hard to be ready, would you have called me now for this?
Well, it's I said before, it's an unpleasant plot line, but it's an important one, and I think it was kind of a logical direction for it to go, because it's not his first episode. I think it's fairly early on. You know the one when Linear and Garibaldi build the motorcycle together?
Yes, eyes, yeah.
That one always stands out with me, but I think, and Linear is still a lovely, lovely person with no caveats in that episode, but it's like, even in that one where he's talking about the masculinity of hopping on the chopper and the freedom of it, it's like there is a bit, even very early on with Linear, a bit of a crisis of masculinity, I guess, going on. And I think kind of his role in Minbari society, where he's the sort of the very polite, very deferential priest kind of thing, I think it would be the kind of thing that might foster those sort of feelings. Where especially, I think early on, Lanier won't even look at Delenn because she's just so much higher in the caste system. And it's like, I think that kind of thing would sort of fester those sort of feelings. And then you get into the fact that, you know, fall in love with someone, they don't love you back. This can be the kind of thing where it's like, it was a logical direction for it to go, but you don't want it to go that way. And it's a lot like Londo when he's doing the deals with Morden and horrible things are happening and he knows he's making a mistake. We see he's making a mistake, but he just keeps going and it slowly falls apart.
He refuses to alter course.
And especially, I'm trying to think to Lanier. Yeah, I think Lanier does, even if he doesn't explicitly say it, he does realize it's a mistake. Because even when he's with Delenn, it's like, it would be unwise for us to stay in Shad. He understands it's a mistake, and he just like Londo, just like with Londo, where you like Londo, and you wanted him to just, you wanted him to not make the mistake, and he just sort of keeps going. Especially in this episode, it's not fallen apart yet. There's still plenty of time to change course, but it's like, it's not going in a good direction.
You know it's not, because when he's in scenes, he's got a big scar on his face, and in his moments with Delenn, he has sharp, contrasted shadows over his face, like he's living in the darkness.
Yeah.
And
the visuals
do a good job. And Bill Mumy, great performance. I know that he's not a fan of where they take Lanier, but he commits to the role even in spite of that. And I am appreciative of his performance way more upon our podcasting through of the series.
Yeah.
What I think really is a standout with Lanier's stuff is, in comparison to a lot of other shows that have this in their characters, is, let's use like Star Trek or other science fiction of this era in particular. They have these things in their characters. Like, this type of relationship has been in other science fiction shows, but it's done in a way
not new.
But the difference is, Babylon 5 explicitly says what it is and what it is about and how it is bad and probably a toxic thing that ruins lives, and that it's not just Lanier's folly but everyone's folly that's involved. While in Star Trek, it's almost like it's a byproduct of another thing. Like, for instance, in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which often gets compared with Babylon 5, and we all know why, and we've all heard the tales, so we won't go over it. But Odo, who's the security chief on the station, he has an infatuation with Major Kira, and he does horrible, heinous things to try and get it. He holds these, to try and get it, like get anything from her, like a relationship or sex or connection or anything.
I just wanted you to qualify it a bit more.
To try and get his desires. And he holds a lot of these attitudes that Lanier does, but it's always in that series in particular, with Star Trek 2, with like Voyager, with Neelix or Chakotay, it's like they're unaware that is a part of it. It's always framed like that happens, but it doesn't matter because they're in love.
Yeah.
And isn't love a good thing? And Star Trek Deep Space Nine kind of ends with this, like this kind of bittersweet, like, Odo and Major Kira didn't get together in the end. Isn't that kind of sad? While in Babylon 5, Marcus, when he hears of Lanier's problem, says, yeah, man, that's something you should probably let go of because it's going to ruin things for everyone. Like, for yourself, it's like, you can't keep that promise. It's just, there is no such thing as like this whole, it's not a romantic love. It's a higher love. No, God. You're fooling yourself. And I think, with B5, it doing that is almost like it's breaking the unspoken rule of having these nice guy characters of this era.
Babylon 5 declares it problematic.
While us revisiting some of those old shows, we go, oh, have you ever noticed that character is really possessive? And did you ever watch Lizzie McGuire? Did any of you watch Lizzie
Yeah,
McGuire?
of course.
I think I saw a bit here and there.
Yeah, well, I can't...
Gordo is a creep.
There was was there a kid character who was like obsessed with another?
Yeah, Gordo,
character,
the guy who was kind of
think?
obsessed with Lizzie McGuire and
Yeah.
is played like, he's basically Linnea.
Yeah, like he's friend zoned, and then they get together in the movie, and it's just like, I like Gordo, I like Lizzie, but the lead up to this relationship is just yikes.
And many shows do that, where it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel, is there something like that in Gilmore Girls? I imagine there must be in Gilmore Girls, where there's like a weird romance.
Marty's it. Like, he's clearly like in love with Rory, but she's friend zoned him, and then she like kind of falls off with him because he's like, I'm not getting in there. I should just bow and take my leave. But then he gets together with one of her other friends. And then when they meet, he's just like, he lies about knowing Rory in the first place.
And what about Twilight, Jacob?
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's almost like these writers, either they don't understand the implications of these type of relationships, or they don't even know it at all,
Yeah.
or they don't care because
the whole
you know what we're doing. It's
idea
love.
of like the nice guy, or like either the nice guy finishes last, or she'll finally realize that the nice guy was there for her all along, and he's the perfect person for her, and he wouldn't have gotten it if he hadn't waited, but he was patient and he deserves it. He earns it. And Babylon 5 doesn't do that. It tells you up front, this is destructive. It will not work out for either of them. Obviously, we're more focused on the cost that it has for Linnea, but it also costs Delenn. And it damages her relationship with her husband as well.
She's doing acts in this episode that she would not do if this relationship with Linnea wasn't the way it was. And that's just the truth of it. She can hide behind the, oh no, I need him to do a secret covert thing and I'm protecting John from that. No, it is a part of this. And Will, with all of these things said, in your opinion, as someone who's only seen the show once through and relatively recently, what is the point of doing this? What is the point of doing this and attaching it to Linnea? Like, what is the thing that you get out of it? Because most people, like Rachel, just want to erase it because what you get out of it is just icky.
So uncomfortable.
I don't want to speak to JMS's intentions because I can't know, but I think it was just sort of, I said logical before, but it's like, that's not necessarily, I think it was just the way Linnea's story was going, and you had to because I think it builds up to it, and it's like, you've got to deliver on it. And then I think it's just, I think it's just a thing. I mean, I think JMS just wants to be very honest about life and things, and it's a bit like, well, this is with the relationship I set up, it's like, this is just sort of the way these things go, that, you know, these people needed to walk away from this because it's like it was going to have bad consequences, and that's exactly what happened.
It's such a wonderful magic trick that Babylon 5 can pull of making you genuinely sympathetic and perhaps even forgiving of a war criminal with Londo. You like Londo in this episode. There's no part of you that's like doing all of this thing that we're doing for Linnea, where Londo is a guy who's committed several war crimes at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And yet when he's smiling like a proud father at Veer wrecking up an alien's business, and he's like, yeah, that's it. That's what our Centauri values are.
That's not complicated.
We because Babylon 5 has done this, but yet Linnea, being a bit of an icky boy about a girl he likes, that gets under our skin.
Yeah.
isn't that fucking crazy? Because you know why? You know why I think it is? Because realistically, that's something we know. On a day-to-day level, we know that. Rachel, you being a woman, you've probably had to experience that with a person before. And me being a guy, I've probably gone through that in a way too, where it's like unrequited love. But like, Will, you've never been a war criminal, and in your life, you've never probably had to forgive. And in your life, you've probably never had to wonder, could I forgive a war criminal realistically, outside of like a philosophical experiment? But on our everyday life, Lanier's stuff, yeah, that comes across my desk.
And I mean, rewatching this episode, because it's like when I initially watched this episode, I think I expected that Lanier would get it together, that he would go through a phase of this, but he would come out the other side. And but rewatching it, knowing what's going to happen down the line, it's a bit like, it has a much more of a train wreck quality than it should. Especially he can even see a similar sort of problem with Findel going on. It's like, if you're not doing this for the right reasons, it's going to blow up in your face horribly. But he
see
just
it in others, but he can't see it in himself.
When he was given the advice, I kept saying, mirror. Pull up a mirror for yourself and say this to yourself, Lanier. You can say these pieces of advice to others, but you cannot apply it to yourself.
If you are doing this because you feel you should be doing this, not because you want to, then your purpose is flawed. The desire to be on the shock must be pure and unselfish. You can't let anything get in the way.
The Minbari are having to change. They're having to transition. They are working together with their human comrades in arms, and there is tensions there. Mm-hmm. I like that about this episode. Is in the other Ranger stories, we have either seen it as like human Rangers are just as worthy as Minbari Rangers and everything's fine, or we have League of Non-Aligned World aliens, and that's awkward. But even after all of these years, even after Sinclair is Valen and all of this stuff, there's still tensions between humans and Minbari working together because not only of history, but just mentality. There's a human captain of this Ranger ship, and Fendel doesn't like him. He doesn't appreciate these human ways. Our traditions have worked for thousands of years, so why change it? And Lanier says, well, thousands of years ago, we didn't have spaceships, so should we just not use spaceships now? Like, should we go back home? Yeah, should we just go back and living in caves? Like, what's your point? Like, we have to go with the times, and this is a part of it. And these humans, their ways of doing things are not invalid just because we don't do them, and they know that of us as well. Like, it's a whole. The Rangers in part is a cultural exchange program.
It is.
Like, I love Captain Montoya. I think he is great. We're going to talk about that performance and that actor in our spotlight section, but that character is so well written and well realized. And an aspect I think goes unsaid in this is Lanier respects him very much, but there's also resentment towards Montoya because Montoya is like Sheridan. He's very much like Sheridan in terms of like, he's the captain, human captain, and he leads like this and he does this and this is how the chain of command works, and he has like that human cockiness to him. And it's not explicitly stated in the episode, but just there's this air of just unpleasantry between these two characters as well as them being friendly. I really like Captain Montoya, and I like with Fendel's story about how he's this fuck up. That's obviously a fuck up, and they're going to let me fuck up all the way to them kicking me out just to prove a point. And I hate that, so I'd rather kill myself than have to live through the sheer embarrassment of having to be taught a lesson. Rachel, we haven't been big fans of the Rangers in the past when we've had episodes or more stories focusing in on them. So what did you think of this? And did having Lanier be one of the actual people as a point of view help things in any way?
Yeah, it does. Because allows you to understand Fidel a bit quicker, I think. Having Linnea there to highlight certain things, as well as that highlighting stuff about Linnea himself. And I'm always just like, how did Fidel get to this point? Why were there not more checkpoints? Like, it's like, why is this the point where the Rangers figure out that somebody needs to be there to stop people from joining for the wrong reasons? Because the Mbryo have the whole thing about the cooling of the heart and all of these other things. So it's just like, what has stopped them from doing this before?
How much of it is just ignorance? How much of it is just oversight? But they're a military organization. And sadly, we see in the real world, as well as in a lot of narratives, we did Space Above and Beyond, and this was extensive in that show, is they're willing to look past some of the shortcomings of recruits because they're bodies.
Yep.
And we need that for our force.
Mm-hmm.
And that check that you're talking about, that's this episode. He's checking them out. I love Montoya when he says, oh, you worked with Sheridan and Delenn? Oh, that's great. Like, that's impressive stuff. Like, obviously, you're flying aces, but
I will treat you the same as any other recruit. You will not get special treatment. You don't get to skip this stage of training because you've been in battle before.
And although I may not be able to teach you things that they can, maybe there are some aspects of Ranger life that they don't know that I am aware of. Montoya as the captain, Will, you mentioned that you may have forgotten his name, but you remembered that the ship was named after someone in his life. Well, let's go over that a little bit. What do you think about how this scene really emphasizes the difference of humans in comparison to aliens, and that even in the far-flung future, we just have this inherent need to personalize a thing. It's always been in human history that ships get names, and they're often women. They're often like her, and he names the White Star. What was it like? It was just a number, like White Star 34.
I think it was like White Star 27. He's like, that's not a good enough name for a ship. He's even put it on the side, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, you know.
It's just like, you won't find it on any records, but it's the Maria.
Named after my sister. Where is she? She's with God. And then walks off. But, Will, what do you think about this touch in the narrative and this character overall of the human ranger captain?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the way the actor performed it. You got the devil may care attitude, and also I'm a hardline military man, but it's like, I've got a sense of humor as well. I'm a little bit funny and things. And yeah, I do like the tension that's going on, because when Linnea asks where is your sister, and he tells her that she's deceased. It's like Findel even has the bit after Linnea says, it's like, oh, I fear I've asked an impertinent question, and Findel almost has the thing that he's probably picked up on. It's like, oh no, the captain likes impertinent questions. You got to ask. That's the only way to get proper information, which you don't get the impression of the Mbryo that you'd ever ask impertinent questions in the Mbryo's command structure.
No. And that's a sure way to get demoted.
And since Findel's been fucking up so much, you know, he has to really be keen to get that one in there. It's like, oh, I picked up on I got to ask impertinent questions, you know, picked up on that one.
Findel, he gets sent back home, Rachel, because he has a new job in life. He has to make sure of what you are asking. You have to check people to make sure that they are actually up for the task. And that's a good idea, but how fucked up is that? Like, this guy spent years probably training to be a ranger, only to be found out that he's not good enough, and you're going to spend the rest of your time looking for other people who are not good enough because you'll know because you aren't.
But it is a way to use his drive to make a positive impact, because he knows it's a mistake and how much that could cost other people. So he's still serving the Rangers, just not in the way that he thought he would.
Oh, Will, Garibaldi is drunk again. He's entered that story arc in which he is boozing it up. He wasn't even in the episode, and then the episode's like, hey, where's Garibaldi at? We haven't seen him all episode.
Hey, we're having dinner.
Where's our good friend Michael Garibaldi? And he's getting his own dinner. He's getting a suicide pizza, which sounds delicious, by the way. Like, he listed all of the stuff on his suicide pizza. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I would have a suicide pizza.
It does sound like a good pizza.
We've had a few episodes now end with, oh, by the way, Garibaldi's drunk on the floor. And I like the drunk Garibaldi arc. Like, I find it very compelling. But I'll say this. JMS, buddy, friend of mine. I mean, we're not friends, but JMS, Season 5, for some reason, you end episodes the exact same way several times in a row. There's going to be other things in Season 5. I was like, oh, and he ends it like this. What's happening, man? Yeah, like, I get it. The Garibaldi stuff, you've already communicated it. I don't need it again. But, like, I appreciate it. But also, like, so many episodes end with this, like, and Garibaldi's drunk on the floor. And that's this episode. It's like, Garibaldi's drunk on the floor.
Was it just the era of television? He's worried. It's like, oh, I've got to chuck it in there a few times. People might miss it. People might miss an episode
like,
here or there.
It's a one-off thing that'll tie up.
But no, you're probably right, Will. Since you're here, what are your feelings about Garibaldi in the 5th season, in which he's in such despair over the fact he can't get that cathartic revenge against the series-long antagonist of Bester, so he decides to turn to the bottle?
Well, Garibaldi's another character who's in B5 is going through the my life is falling apart kind of thing, where he's hopelessly drunk. Has he committed the bombing at this point? I can't remember, where he bombs the Psycho building on Mars, you know?
No.
That hasn't happened yet.
No, so
we're building up to him falling apart.
Yeah, so with that's more like Lita's stuff, but he's like, eventually he teams up with Lita to do stuff against the Bester, but at this point, he's just getting drunk and sleepy a lot.
I mean, we got to keep in mind, you know, he went
keeps
through
on singing about wanting to go to bed.
A horrible neurological alteration and like betrayed one of his friends, man. It's like he's probably in pretty good condition, just being hopelessly alcoholic at the minute, to be all things considered.
That is...
It could be worse, and it's not great.
Oh, and especially for him, it's heartbreaking because he has since the beginning been a recovering alcoholic, and we have seen him slip up once before in season 1, but in between then and now, he's been on the straight and narrow, even in spite of all of these things. And it's about the fact he can't get the ability to unleash all of this anger. He turns to destruction of himself, as stated.
Because he can control that.
So where is Garibaldi? I haven't seen him all day. I thought he was going to come.
I sent him a note. Perhaps he didn't get it.
It's getting pretty thin.
So we better start talking about an actor or actress that appeared in the given episode, go over their performance, any interesting pieces of trivia, as well as things they have starred in. And we are going to be talking about the actor behind the role of Captain Enrico Montoya. And by the way, I love how he says all of his lines. He just has this real flair of like...
You have fun with him.
He has this line delivery of, yeah, I'm the lead character of the show. Haven't you noticed? Like, he really plays it like, yeah, it's my story, by the way. It's my story, and you should have known that.
Especially, he didn't have too many lines or too many scenes, but he's like very memorable. Very memorable.
He has a very specific look and the way he holds himself. So the actor is Richard, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, because when I looked it up on the internet how to pronounce it, every source of how to pronounce it, there were people saying, that's not how you pronounce it. So please forgive me for butchering this, but Richard Wainingez, which, again, people like, it's a Y. You have to say Y, not Yai. So please forgive. But Richard has been in a few things, but I've already given some my opinions on the performance. I really appreciate and love how funny he is. He's a really funny character.
He's delightful. Wouldn't you agree, Will?
Yes. I really liked. I probably shouldn't say it again, but I will. I really liked I'm a hard ass military man, but also doing my own way. But it's also a real funny thing. And it's the bit where he's saying super serious. It's we're going on an Easter egg hunt today. I had to imagine that after they got out, he might have had a good giggle at that. It's because saying that way.
I really liked how he explained the Easter egg hunt and about there are 39 of them. Now, there's nothing wrong with a bit of competition, and he is just so much relishes in that fucking line delivery. And this guy, he's so charismatic. There's just a certain magic that actors have on the screen in which they just light it up. And as soon as you see him, you say, oh yeah, this guy is a captain of a bunch of ninjas in space. I completely buy that. You never doubt it. And with the Rangers or any sci-fi show, there are those people where they walk on in with the makeup or the hair or the outfit, and sometimes you get I'm watching a show for dorks. And I've gotten that from the Rangers before. I find the Rangers to be particularly dorky. And it worked because Marcus was a dork. So it's okay, Marcus is a dork, but also he's incredibly sexy. Captain Montoya, I'm all right, I would watch a show with the Rangers because they seem legitimately badass, because he seems legitimately like a badass space captain, but he's quiet and he's reflective, but when he needs to bust balls, he knows how to bust them. Were there moments for you, Rachel, in the performance or the characters' scenes that you gravitated towards?
It all fairly evens. It all kind of evens out. It's all just really good. But the moments where the character is delighted in what he's doing are particularly enjoyable.
Let's go over some aspects of this actor's career. So he has been at it since the early 70s, and he finished up in film and TV around 2015 from what I could tell. Does not mean he's not still acting out there. I did have a look. He's on some social media sites, and it seems like he's just kind of chilling out for some business stuff. It seems like I'm not 100%, but he's had a long career, a lot of one and done roles, not too many ongoing gigs and
just
shows.
A little bit over 100 acting credits.
107, I want to say, acting credits. And Will, would you be surprised? Actually, I want to hear from you, Will. What type of character do you think he plays the most?
What type of character does he play the most? Because that'd be hard. Because in this episode, you might think heroic, charismatic, big tough guy, big boss guys, but it's maybe
he worked
not.
from the 70s through to the noughties.
Through the 2010s.
What kind? Well, I think if that's what he played in this, maybe that was not what he usually played. Maybe someone meek and minor, maybe just sort of little roles in maybe service jobs, maybe in playing characters doing service jobs. That's just my guess.
If you had to guess, okay, let's boil it down to this. What type of career do these characters play a lot? Was
he in any westerns? He'd do well in that. He'd do really well in that.
Cowboy stuff, yeah, that's a good idea.
Because he was sort of a space cowboy in this. It's I could buy that very easily.
Well, I'll reveal it. He plays a lot of authority figures. Mainly
sheriffs.
Cops.
There we go.
I actually didn't notice if he's done any westerns, but he's done a lot of cop shows.
I'd watch that.
If you look at his IMDb profile picture, it's him in the most copy cop outfit ever, where he's like got the button-up shirt, the tie, he's got his holster on his side, he's got a big phone next to his ear, he's at a desk, like a typical like desk you see in a precinct, and he's like yelling on the phone or whatever. I'm like, yeah, he plays cops. A lot of military roles, a lot of that type of stuff.
Like a father in terms of being a priest a couple of times too.
And also he's played a lot of roles that are either, Hispanic in nature or Latino. He's played a lot of characters with names like Jesus or Enrico Montoya and stuff like that. And so he's had to play, I guess, a variety of ethnic roles in which it's like, hey, you have this certain look, so we need you for this type of character. And so he's had to do many things. So he's done it all. Like he's done the A-Team. He was in that. To relate it to Babylon 5, he was in Scarecrow and Mrs. King, which was Bruce Boxleitner's TV show before Babylon 5. It was like his crimey show. And that was one of the reasons they wanted Bruce Boxleitner on, because Scarecrow and Mrs. King was a big show. And if we could get the lead guy from that will bring people in. He was in Hill Street Blues, which was what Londo was in before Babylon 5. He was the resident snitch in that show who would come in every now and then. And so this actor was in Hill Street Blues, which, by the way, never forget, one of the head writers of Hill Street Blues was the guy Mark Frost, who went on to do Twin Peaks. So that's a piece of fun. And Babylon 5 has some Twin Peaks people from time to time. He was in MacGyver, Will, the iconic MacGyver. And he was in a superhero property. He was in the Flash TV show.
As well as the Incredible Hulk.
That's correct. He did both of those things. Rachel, were there any others that leapt out to you? Things that you've seen, perhaps, or things that you are aware of?
He was in Bonanza.
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii Five-0. Different Strokes. Dynasty. Zorro, where he played 3 different characters.
Yeah, that's the life you live when you're like a supporting actor.
Days of Our Lives.
Only in 3 episodes of that.
Yeah. CIA Miami.
CSI Miami. CIA was a different Miami.
Yeah.
But he was in The Shield.
Law and Order, Dead on the Money.
Oh, okay. He was in Murder, She Wrote.
Yes.
Do you want to know which episode of Murder, She Wrote?
Of course I do.
I'm so happy. It's an iconic episode of Murder, She Wrote. It's a late episode. It's like season 10, in which she's a famous writer. Everyone knows who she is. She lives in New York at this point. She writes on a laptop instead of a typewriter. And this is the episode in which Jessica Fletcher, Angela Lansbury, is introduced to the concept of VR. So you see her put on a big VR headset and solve a crime through VR. It's very iconically silly. And he's the cop in that episode where it's like, hello, Jessica Fletcher. Could you put on this VR headset for us and solve a crime? Like that, it's very silly. He's in Midnight Caller, which is a television series that Gary Cole was the lead in. And Gary Cole would eventually be the lead in Crusade, the spin-off series of Babylon 5. And yes, you said it, Zorro, but I'm really wanting to talk about one particular role.
Hit us.
It's called Carmen, a hip opera. He was in a movie starring Beyonce, who's Carmen, and it's a movie in the early 2000s, Will, called Carmen, a hip opera. Opera is one word. Obviously, it's a hip hop opera, and I was so fascinated by this. It's very low rated. The Beyonce fan base don't talk about it. I looked that up. And it's just a bunch of like musicians, like rappers, hip hop artists, and it's a classic, like, West Side Story, crime story opera where it's just a bunch of music from all of these musicians, and he's in it as an actor. And I had to bring this up because I love these strange little things where it's like, what is this? When you hear the title, you're like, a hip opera? Oh, someone's got to be, Beyonce's in this? No one talks about Beyonce's acting roles all that much, but she has a really, really weird catalog of work too. But I was unable to find out much about this actor's life outside of what you read on IMDb. Like, there's not too much in my research. I don't know about you, Rachel.
No, his LinkedIn has that he's like the CEO of a production company. His personal website is linked to a empty MySpace profile.
No.
And that was about it. And like on LinkedIn and his Instagram, he was promoting that he was attending like a car show. Yeah. He's been doing a couple of those, and it's just like, hey, bring your CDs and DVDs and magazines, and I'll sign them for you.
I won't put it on his record. I think we took care of that problem as best we can. But I know. And you should learn one very important lesson. Never, ever assume that no one can listen in on a private channel.
On our scale of Yum being bad and Yum being good,
I want to hear from Will.
Meditations on the Abyss, where does it fall? Will, Yum, or Yum?
Look, it's definitely not my favorite episode, but I'm going Yum.
Yum.
I have to agree with Will on this. I'm giving this a Yum.
Yum.
It's not a like high Yum, that it's a solid Yum.
Yum.
We need to hear what we'll be talking about and watching next time on Babylon 5.
On an all-new Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5, episode 15, Darkness Ascending. Command says one thing, his sense of duty says another. Lanier disobeys orders, commandeers a vessel, and risks his life to obtain holographic proof of Centauri involvement in the shipping line attacks.
That's it. There's no other plots in that episode.
It's just all Lanier, apparently.
Linear.
That's the DVD description, but can I read another description? It's called my description. Darkness Ascending. Lise returns. Yay! We love Lise. We all love Lise. Everyone celebrates as Lise returns. Will, thank you so much for joining us yet again and coming on to discuss Babylon 5. It's the an end of an era too. I mean, this will be the last time we get to talk to you on the pod about B5. So I am so glad that you managed to chew through the show and watch it all and come on to the podcast a couple of times before we wrapped up our own watch through of the series. And now imagine our struggle, Will, of having to watch all 5 seasons once a week.
That is hardcore.
Yep.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's like, that is hardcore. I couldn't have kept up with that.
It's tough stuff. We're saints, Rachel. We are saints. People can support our sainthood.
Yeah. Just like the church, we accept donations. Our favored method is Patreon, where you actually get stuff from us in exchange for that money, not just some vague instructions or a blessing. You get the divine content that we deliver over there.
We have so much content. We are going through The Expanse for the first ever time. We have not seen it before, and so if you want to hear those episodes right now, we are chewing our way through that. We are midway through The Expanse as I speak right now, so you should come on over and listen and be a part of our group Discord. We talk about so many things there: Star Trek, Babylon 5, The Expanse, and just whatever's happening right now. If you have not rated and reviewed the podcast on your podcasting site of choice, you should. It would mean the world to us, as well as follow us on the social medias or any of those podcasting sites you do use. We're on all of them, including YouTube even. moment, we're on YouTube. We have the YouTube channel. People drop comments on there. It's a fantastic time to be had, so don't miss out. Feel free to suggest our podcast to any of your friends, family, or foes. And real big thank you for listening to us, for giving us your time, and for hearing us talk about Jakar's spirituality, which does get in the way of him saying a farewell that he used to say, but he no longer does.
Is that our last gasp of breath before we open the door?
To get fresh air before we suffocate to death, we must say a hearty good eating to you. Good eating to you, Will.
Good eating to you, everybody.
Mr. Keller!